I went through about 43 plus false allegations, $700,000 in family court over a 16-year period just to be in my children's life. The family court weaponizes people against each other. It makes them adversaries. Parental alienation is by separating that child from that parent. And it's either by interfering with their child custody or a false allegation. I mean, I can tell you, child support was never meant to benefit the parent or the child. It was to pay the state back. The states make 66% of reimbursement of what they've spent. Even the civil rights movement, they affected one race.
hmm
This affects every man, woman, child, race, color, creed, and for generations. This is the biggest civil rights movement since the civil rights, and we're living in it right now. We will not stop until truth, justice, and the family unity prevail.
Ladies and gentlemen, mums and dads, children of appropriate ages, welcome to the Papa Family Court Voice podcast. Our special guest this week, he is the man behind the Texas SB 718 bill. Is passed 400 plus bills nationwide, holds current leadership positions as the Director for Americans for Judicial Accountability. He is Executive for Texans for Judicial Accountability, the man behind Time Taken Back.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Time
Yeah.
taken, time back. Yes.
And sorry to correct myself, and your website, it's not 400 plus bills, it's 500 plus bills nationwide.
Yes.
There's one more that I want to add in here. You're the member of Parental Alienation Study Group as well.
Yes.
So hopefully throughout the podcast, we're going to be able to touch upon a lot of those. I know I've literally picked out a few that jumped out to me, but there's a huge amount of work that you do aside from this as well. I could have done a 10-minute long intro on you, to be honest. But if I've missed anything that you want to talk about, please do talk about it. But the ones that I've mentioned are the ones that jumped out to me instantly. So I'd love to chat, and if we could discuss some of those. As always with our podcast, we generally have three main themes that we like to discuss. So the three main themes, as always, are: what do you do to raise awareness? I think I've mentioned some of the things already, so I'd like to find out a little bit more about that. We'd like to talk about your social channels, the videos that you create, the content, the work that you do. Just so you know as well, you actually created a little bit of conflict in the Papa offices this week because there was a bit of discrepancy about who got to interview you. Unfortunately, seeing as I'm the podcast host, that fell to me. So very pleased about that, and very anxious at the same time because now I need to make sure that I do a good job and keep everybody happy. The second part is with regards to the family courts. So it would be good to understand what your personal experience is with the family courts. And again, I think you've been pretty transparent on your background on your website. So if you feel comfortable in talking about that, we'd love to hear it, because I think knowing your drivers and knowing your experience behind what you do is going to be completely valuable to so many people. And then the third topic that we will talk about will be centered around mental health. So it'd be good to find out, with the research that you've done, what you believe is the impact on mental health on either yourself, the individuals that you come across, and more importantly, the children. So, Robert, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on our podcast. And like I say, really, really excited to have you here. The floor is yours. What do you want to talk about?
Thanks. So, well, thanks for having me. Thanks for your organization. I'm very honored to be here. I am just a parent, just like everyone else. I went through about 43 plus false allegations, $700,000 in family court over a 16-year period just to be in my children's life. I am a fit, willing, and able parent. I've had my kids the whole time, and that's kind of how this started. The family court weaponizes people against each other. It makes them adversaries. I don't know if a lot of your viewers know this or what it's like there overseas, but here in the US, there was a line that was drawn about 30 years ago, and it's called standard possession, and it's every first, third, and fifth weekend. I'm sure that a lot of people adopted that. The problem with it is that line was actually made to differentiate for judges not to go below this line. It was a line in the sand that, hey, judges, you have this full discretion, but don't go below this. Somehow in the last 30 years, that's became the standard, and that's the problem. And so the floor now became the ceiling, or a starting point, and that pins people against each other. That's why we're having so many problems with this whole system going against each other. And so we're trying to redraw that line because of parental alienation, because of false allegations. All of that starts in those family courts because you're pinning each other as adversaries.
Just to clarify, you're based in Texas, is that right?
Yes.
So Texas comes up on my feed quite a lot and with regards to how they run the family court system, CMS, separating families, CMS, child maintenance payments and things like that. And also forced adoption seems to have a pretty bad rep, meaning that it seems to have the highest statistics in America from what I've seen. And there was a podcast that popped up on my feed a little while ago where there's this guy that explains it. And he was talking about incentives from the state and how they're incentivized by the government more. Do you call it CMS in the US? The more
I'll like child support.
child support, yeah. So the more child support they generate, the higher percentage that they get, and they're incentivized for that. And the same thing with forced adoption. The more children they put into forced adoption, the more funding that they get from from the government for that particular state. And the Texas state is the largest one. Have I understood that correctly? Is there anything that you
Yes.
can expand on?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you, child support was never meant to benefit the parent or the child. It was to pay the state back. And it was way back when Ronald Reagan, when he was the governor of California, he was married to someone that was not Nancy Reagan and she wanted a divorce. So he wouldn't give her one. Judge said, nope, sorry. You said better for worse. So she made false allegations against him. And when he went through that, in fact, it affected the presidency and all kinds of stuff because he was about to become president. So he decided that he was going to make it to where nobody had to go through this.
Hmm.
And so he ended up making it to where there's no fault divorce. That's where this came from. Now the whole nation started getting divorced. That was back in the 70s and or 70s, 80s, somewhere around there. And then that's where child support came in because now all these women that were divorcing were getting put on food stamps, Section 8 housing, and they were taxing the government. So the government incentivized the states, hey, look, we're going to put child support in. And the only way that you get put on child support back then was that you were on government assistance or at the risk of it. Because what that did is it got you above that threshold where it kept you off of the government funding. That's where child support came from. It was for basically to keep you off of welfare or to pay the state back. And then when you collected it, the states make about, or Texas does at least, make 66% of reimbursement of what they've spent back to them. And so they kept hiring more people, and that's kind of where that came from. But yeah, that's Title 4D basically.
Now, you say that a lot of the states have rolled that out. And for me personally, I think that the UK have literally just copy and pasted that same model and they're implementing it in the UK. It's very, very transparent to me. They've thought, oh, that's a good idea. Let's do that as well. And it seems to be a worldwide thing. One thing I noticed on your website that I missed out, you don't just work across Texas, you work nationwide and you also look at things from a global perspective as well. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I started in Texas, and the crazy part is most of this stuff came out of Texas years ago, like even before I was born. And now, since I've went through the family court system for about 16 years, I figured out, well, I had to learn criminal law, civil law, constitutional law to understand where all this is coming from. I'm pro se now, which means I represent myself. And in doing so, I saw where a lot of these legal loopholes were at in the system because I lived them for 16 years
Hmm.
and they were used on me. So now I know how to expose them and how to shut them down with one-page bills. And that's where all of these bills came from.
Hmm.
And the first one that I did was called Time Taken, Time Back. It's to stop parental alienation before it starts. Because the only way that you can, well, not the only way, most of the time that you can do parental alienation is by separating that child from that parent. And it's either by interfering with their child custody or a false allegation. And so when I went through this, I went through 43 plus false allegations They were all done by proxy. They were all ruled out. And now what I've done is return those resources to those agencies by stopping this. And the time taken, time back, it's a super easy bill. It's basically when you go through a false allegation or a protective order restraining order, when that allegation is ruled out and there is no finding of abuse or neglect, when you return the child, you shall return the time, the same type of time, and the same exact amount of time.
Hmm.
That stops false allegations, but it doesn't stop a real allegation. Most of these allegations come from people trying to hijack their time. And I coined it called holiday hijacking. It's right before a big holiday. They'll make a false allegation, probably around Thanksgiving. They'll take your Thanksgiving, your Christmas, your New Year's. And by the time that it's ruled out, and by the time you get back into court, you're looking at 4 months just off of one allegation.
Really good opportunity to play the video that I was talking to you about earlier. Do you mind if I hit play on that? I think it's really powerful video and I'd love everyone to see it.
There's a thing called holiday hijacking. You can go out any courtroom right before Christmas, Thanksgiving, a big holiday. There's lawyers out there waiting to file these protective orders, restraining orders. They do it because it's a big gap of time that you can take with one allegation. This stops all of those games. It returns the resources to CPS, to the district attorney's office, to the court system. There is no fiscal note to this. When you return the child, you shall return the time. Now, courts, they take away your parental right on a precaution. They're not supposed to be able to do that. They violate your Fifth Amendment right for due process, your 14th Amendment right for care, custody, and control on a precaution. But if these people are going to keep playing these games, it lets them know that if you take my Christmas, you're going to return 2 Christmases in a row. If you take my Thanksgiving, you're going to miss 2 in a row. It stops the games. That's all this does.
Okay, so your videos honestly bring a bit of a lump to my throat, to be honest. And it 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 really is gut wrenching hearing another human being say literally be open about what's really going on and try and strive for change. Can you tell us a little bit about that day, what you're doing there, the environment where you are, what you're doing, and how it came about?
Yeah, that was in Missouri. And, one of my admins reached out to their legislature, and this one House rep, she responded with it. And the crazy part is, you know, all of this is all mixed in, but long story short, she had somebody here in Texas, one of her best friends' son that was going through the same thing. And she was like, absolutely, I'll take this. Like, this is exactly what someone's going through that I know and I love. And when she did that, she did an amazing job giving it to the Missouri legislature. They took it and ran with it. We had two people that were really opposing it there, which is sad because this really fixes the problem. So it's going to get passed there eventually. So she took the time taken, time back, and now she's about to do the three strikes law.
I saw where you talk about judges being recorded in the courtroom for not behaving in a correct way. And I just think to myself, isn't that a really obvious thing to do? Right? Because we're in the information age now where cameras are so easily accessible, recording devices are so easily accessible. Surely everyone can be held accountable if you just record it and put it on public display, or at least give the litigants or the people that are in court access to those video files so it's recorded. Nothing can be done in secrecy.
The crazy part is there's actually states in the US that already record, everything's recorded. There's no off the record anything. And Kentucky is one of those. We have a judge, her name's Micah Pence, that comes to some of these hearings and testifies for some of this stuff to show that 50/50 shared parenting is better, to show that the cameras in the courtroom help. A lot of these litigants and a lot of these games, because I've lived them, when a judge gives their oral ruling and you have one pro se and one that has an attorney, the judge gives an oral ruling, one of them has to turn it into an order. And so that proposed order gets entered. The crazy part is that attorney usually puts in a bunch of crazy stuff that the judge didn't order, knowing that you're pro se. You don't know that you're supposed to, when they do stuff like that, that you can object to it or enter in your own dueling proposed order. And then you have a hearing on that. But if you don't know those civil rules of procedure, you're going to get buried very quickly. And that's why the cameras in the courtroom are so important, because if you have a dispute about something, you can just say, hey, judge, here's the USB drive. This is not what you ordered. Because right now, if you don't have cameras in the courtroom, then you're going to have to get and pay for that transcribed person to do it. And by that time, maybe, if you're waiting for something, that the lapse of time has meant to do a motion to reconsider or anything like that. And then you're having to spend more money, which is
Yep.
crazy.
Yep.
So it stops all the games, and it's coming to that anyway. There's a lot of people that are short of court reporters right now all over the US. They're having to stall hearings or record it some other way. They're doing it in California right now. Now, a lot of these people aren't going to court reporter school anymore. It's a dying breed. We're going to change over to cameras and to audio and video recording in every courtroom. If you're not doing it now, you're going to do it later. And so you might as well just move over now and stop a lot of that stuff. And I have a bill for that. It doesn't stop. Well, it doesn't take over the court transcribe person. That's still the official court record, but everything still gets recorded.
I don't know whether you know much about what's going on in the UK, but since last year, I think it's last May, for the first time, they are now claiming that journalists and reporters are allowed in courtrooms, which is the first time that that's ever come to fruition. How much of that is a reality, I'm not quite so sure, because we've had members of our team trying very, very hard to see if that's actually a fact, but there's been a lot of red tape and a lot of pushback and a lot of no's, should we say. So it doesn't seem to be really happening at the moment. So I think it's fantastic that there seems to be progress in the US, and I'm that it's going to happen in the UK as well soon.
As far as the cameras in the courtroom go, you can go get media pass. Anybody can do it as long as you have a social media channel, and try it in the UK, but get a media pass and let them deny it, and then you'll have proof. But try a media pass.
Yeah, so with the UK, to have a media pass, you've got to prove or show evidence that it's your main source of income to have
Oh
a
wow.
media pass. Okay, so for your everyday person like me, for example, who does this not necessarily as their main source of income, it's going to be a lot more difficult, right, to be able to justify that. But there are ways in now, from what I understand, with regards to bloggers and social platforms and the type of audience that you have. And that's something that we're definitely working on with Papa. So it'd be good to sort of come back to you and find out a little bit more about how this is something that I'd love to talk to you about, how you kind of get into the positions that you're in, because we seem to be hitting brick walls in the UK all the time. Before we go into that, I really want to show everyone this other video that we've got here. I spoke about this video offline, right? And I told you that I literally had these thoughts almost word for word in my mind. And to see another human being have exactly the same thoughts and say exactly the same things, for me, it was mind blowing, absolutely mind blowing. And that's why I have to show this to everybody, because you're absolutely spot on.
Every generation has had its moral blind spot. Slavery was once legal. Women were once denied the vote. Civil rights were once denied to people based on skin color. Millions were silenced in the Holocaust while the world turned away. Today, courts deny children's equal time with both parents, and society calls it in the best interest. History will judge this too, and one day denying 50-50 custody will be remembered with the same shame as every injustice once was allowed.
So the bits at the end, wow, that guy literally said exactly how I'm feeling right now, just watching that. And like I say, I feel like I'm tearing up a little bit just watching that, because it's just such a powerful thing to hear and to see. And you're absolutely right. What's going on in the UK? I don't know how much you keep up to date with UK news, but they're calling what's going on with the family court as big as something called the post office scandal, which is a big thing that went on for 30 years over here. It's absolutely huge. I think it's bigger than a post office scandal, but that's probably not as relevant for you. But how did you come up with that dialogue there, and where were you this day? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I get these downloads. So whether you believe in God, the universe, I believe in God. And so around 2:30, between 2 and 4 o'clock in the morning, I get these things that I can't even go back to sleep unless I write them. And I
You
get
mean a
behind
mental download?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
And I'm sure you do too. You get you're like, all of a sudden you wake up and it's like, bam, it's there, right?
Hmm.
So that's exactly how this did. And I was frantic that day. I mean, I was just like, I'll write it in the morning. And I couldn't go back to sleep until I wrote it. And that's what came out. So, a lot of the bills that are written are the same way. Pretty much everything that you see me putting on social media is that same process. One more thing about that thing, the video with that, I see this whole movement that we're going through right now as the largest civil rights and human rights movement. We will not stop until truth, justice, and the family unity prevail. And if people don't understand it, even the civil rights movement, they affected one race. This affects every man, woman, child, race, color, creed, and for generations. This is the biggest civil rights movement since the civil rights, and we're living in it right now. And you're all a part of it. You're all, we're living history as in the making as we see it.
So you were going to tell us about some of your bills.
Yes. So I have about 10 bills right now. And the first one is 50-50 parenting. It's a very simple bill. You have to be fit, willing, and able, live within 25 miles of your child. And it has a clause in there where the judge has full discretion, but now it adds accountability and transparency that they have to write findings and facts and conclusions of law if they're going to go below that standard. That changes everything. Right now, they just tell you what you get and they don't tell you why they did it. So, this findings and facts and conclusions of law makes a massive difference. And then you can't give anything less than 45% to either parent. And then we put that guideline in there because they could just say someone had 50-50, but they didn't. And then just give someone one day a week and whatever. And just on paper, they have 50-50. So, that's why that other guideline is in there. Now, for domestic violence, built into this too, and we all agree. And here's the crazy part. Nobody can really argue against 50-50, a new start at equality, because we all agree that someone that has substantiated domestic violence doesn't deserve 50-50. We all agree.
Hmm.
Take domestic violence off the table. Now, what is your argument if you're a fit, willing, and able person? There is no real good argument for that. So then we have time taken, time back. So even if you have 50-50 or standard possession or expanded standard, your possession time goes to zero because if you just make a false allegation, and that's why you need the time taken, time back bill in your state or in your country, because it stops the weaponization of making a false allegation to take your time. So that one's actually more important than even custody because it ensures the custody that you already have, that you get that. And
But
then the
on that one, sorry to interrupt, but on that one, this is really important, right? Because in the UK, as soon as there's a false allegation, you are literally treated as if you've committed that crime or you're a safeguarding issue without looking at any evidence. On day one, you turn up and they will say something along the lines of, for preventative measures, we're going to stop contact. And it's like, okay, well, it's just a false allegation, right? And you could spend the next 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, on average a year, doing the fact finding, doing the trials, going in and out of court. And then when you finally prove those allegations to be false and you get to the end, they say, well, it's taken this long now. So what we're going to do for the good of the children is we're going to maintain the status quo.
Mhm.
And, okay, so I'm just going to be punished for something that I haven't done, which you've proved. And the other person, there's no accountability for, what is in essence the domestic abuse against the other person for committing perjury, and what I believe is child abuse for weaponizing the children and using them as part of your game plan, to gain leverage in the family courts. Is that something that happens in the US as well, or is it just UK?
No, all the time. In fact, that's why these bills were born, is to stop that before you really destroy that child. And just so you know, so that time taken, time back bill, that's the first bill I did. And there's 30 million people in Texas. Think about that. I don't know how many are in the UK, but 30 million in just tech one state alone. This bill went through unanimous, bipartisan, the first time. It only took 6 months to pass this bill in Texas to affect 30 million Texans. The governor signed off on it on Father's Day. I mean, this was an amazing bill, and that's where all of this started. And the crazy part is, so as soon as that bill passed and there was no more incentivization for making a false allegation, my ex stopped doing false allegations and started interfering with my child custody. I was like, you got to be kidding me. I just solved this issue and then now you do this. So, but that's okay. There was a reason for it because now I've solved the issue with interference with child custody too. And so that's where the three strikes law came. And so right now in most US states, I don't know about the UK, but in about 98% of the states, it's a felony the first time you withhold a child from the parent against a court order. The the route that you should go if there's really abuse is you go get a protective order, restraining order, and that overrides any court order. A lot of people don't do that because they're just being vindictive. And so no district attorney's office wants to arrest a parent, especially if they're being protective. So what I've done here is I've went to about 40 something states, talked to senators, House reps, DAs, judges, everyone about these bills because I don't want unintended consequences. And what I came up with is that I'm going to amend that felony to be 2 misdemeanors before the felony. And that makes all the world a difference because now you're showing the district attorney's office a pattern of bad behavior. They can and will prosecute for it once this goes through in whichever state it is. The other thing is that if you're a real protective parent, then you have 3 chances now to get that child to safety rather than being arrested the first time. If you're a targeted parent, it works great for you too, because most of the time you have a Thursday visitation and then maybe every first, third, and fifth weekend. Thursday would be that first $500 fine. Friday, Saturday, Sunday would be the second. And literally by the following Thursday, someone's going to stop playing games or they're getting arrested. So it stops the bad behavior before it starts and it protects the protective parent.
So, with regards to the laws or the orders being upheld, is it something that happens regularly? Because I don't know whether you've seen the report or the transparency report or data that the guys from Papa put together. I did a review of it the other day, but the stats were ridiculous. It was something like out of all the orders that are not upheld, 1.7 of them. It was the largest data set in the UK of this kind. 1.7% were actually upheld. That's a tiny, tiny amount. It's
Yeah,
ridiculous, right?
that's a crazy low number. And that's the problem that we're seeing with family court. If you look at child support and how many people go to jail or get their license taken away or anything else, that's a whole nother, those stats are better than interfering with your child custody and getting something done in a criminal court.
Do you know a rough ballpark of where those stats are?
I don't, not in the US or not Texas. I haven't really looked into it. My whole thing is if you're not abiding by a court order that you've already spent tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands to go get,
Mm-hmm.
what sense does it make to go back to that same court to get more orders that you're not following already?
There was another, I say, funny thing that you said. It's not funny at all. It's funny because it's true. But you said something where, what's the point in going through family court, spending tens of thousands of dollars or pounds in the UK, and you get to the end and you win your children back, but you don't have a home to put them in?
Mhm.
It's completely baffling, isn't it? It just doesn't make sense at all. What are you supposed to do?
Yeah, I just talked to a parent today that walked away from his children after fighting this for several years. He didn't have any more money. He just said, "Look, it seems well." After he told me what was going on, I was like, "Look, this happens all the time, and you have to do it for your own safety too, if that's what you have to do. But you have to walk away from your children if you're dealing with someone that's bipolar and a narcissist because they will do everything they can. As long as those children love you, you're basically putting them in harm's way with this person. So at some point, if they're that determined to ruin your life, this father walked away because he realized that no matter what he did, the more that his kids love him, the more they're going to get punished, and he couldn't deal with it. So he just
Yes.
had to remove himself because he ran out of money and everything else. So
Yeah, the problem is with you know, like you say, personality disorders, toxic people, they just don't seem to take into consideration the welfare of the child. It's more important to harm the other person than their own child's welfare. And surely the courts are able to see that, but the fact that they don't act upon it and act accordingly is what baffles me. Question that's been burning in my mind since we've been talking is you've mentioned these bills. Obviously, it's something that's very important to you. What I want to know is how do you get these bills in front of the right people? Because that's something that's virtually impossible in the UK. Virtually impossible. We've got tens of thousands of petitions running around the internet and on Facebook and things like that. And they don't even make a dent in government at all. MPs don't want to know. Nobody responds to emails. You get sent off in endless loops. So my question is, how have you managed to gain an audience?
so I feel it's God. I feel the time right now that we're living in, there is a big equaling of all the injustices that have been going on. The doors have just swung open. Every time I want to meet with someone, I am able to get to them. And so I was just like all your viewers. I was just a regular person. I didn't go to law school. I didn't have any of that training. I just went through what they went through. And when I got out of this, I promised, I was just like, God, please let this not be for nothing and be careful what you wish for because he made it not for nothing for sure. I thought that President Trump would be able to do something for me. So I took my bill there and he was like, no, I can't do anything. I don't make laws. He's like, you have to go to your senator or house rep. And so I went to my US Senator, Ted Cruz. And sure enough, they were like, well, this is a state level thing, not that level. But as far as getting to people, you have to go to whoever represents you. And if they're not representing you well, then take their job.
I think, I think the problem in the UK is that we've got local MPs, right? So members of parliament. And if you approach them, the general feedback is, sorry, that's not our jurisdiction. We don't get involved in that sort of thing. We're not allowed to get involved in that sort of thing. So if you can't go to your MP, or they're getting orders from above to say that generic rebuttal, right? So if you can't go to your local MP and discuss it with them or get support, they're clearly being told not to help. Then what do you do other than go on social media or send a tweet out to the world?
So I can tell you right now, I have been in discussions with One Nation on this topic. Now, once I told them what the solution was, they've really not responded anything yet as far as that went. Because if you want to fix something, and it goes not just them, it's everybody. If you're going to go meet with someone and you already know the response, then meet with someone else. And if you know that that's going to be the main response is that this is not our problem or we can't do anything about it, you need to learn how to educate them that they can do something about it. I remember when I called the cops to come and deal with the interference with child custody, they said, we can't do anything about it. It's a civil matter. I'm like, absolutely not. It's a criminal matter. Here's your penal code.
They
Let
use
me
that line as well in the US.
yeah. I was like, let me educate you on this. And it's a criminal matter. And so I had to go to the police station, talk to the sergeant and everything else because they didn't want to take my report. And once I told the sergeant, I'm like, look, here's the thing. I've already passed legislation for time taken, time back. I explained to him I already went through family court. This is a criminal matter. And if they don't do something about it, I'm going to report that to the legislature that their police station is not abiding by the rules that the legislature is setting. And I'm going to go testify in front of him. He went back upstairs. Police came down, said, so they took my report. And then after that, they took it, and then they followed the chain of command. But it took knowing the law to educate them on the law and said, look, once you take this, my report, you're going to have to give it to a detective in your youth division. You're going to find probable cause. It's going to go to the DA. The DA is going to basically recommend it to the grand jury. The grand jury is going to choose to indict or not indict. That is the process. That's how the system works, and that's how it's going to work here. So you literally have to tell them how this works. They don't know because they've never been through it. But educate yourself on how your system works, and you can actually talk to them and say, here's what you're going to do. I know you don't understand this, but here's how you do it.
Yeah, when you say educate yourself, that's definitely something I've been doing, not necessarily by choice over the last few years, but more because I've had to, because, they got to a point where I couldn't afford representation anymore. I, drained all of my savings, all of my resources to the point where, I've incurred mounds of debt. So the only way to keep defending myself against these false allegations is to be a litigant in person. So what did you say it's called in the US when you represent yourself?
Pro se.
Pro se. So in the UK, we call it litigant in person. So it's meant I've had to do all my own research, and I've had to look at my own case law and look at all of the practice directions. And what I've noticed is how much of a ride I've been taken by the judges. They are literally not following their own laws. And even if you quote them in, position statements and things like that and say, this is the law, this is what you said, this is the order, this is what needs to happen next. They just go, oh, we don't need to look at that. And, let's move on, shall we? And they just steamroller you or brush you off. Honestly, it's ridiculous. And if you go to the police and say, okay, so on your website, there's a specific list of what domestic abuse constitutes. Here's the list, 1 to 10. And here's an example, a tangible example, not an allegation, tangible example of each of those, with, you can see like real evidence. And the only response they had was, are you in family court at the moment? I said, yes, I am. Well, it's a civil matter, so we can't get involved. So that line that you said really triggered me, because it's clearly something that they just use. And I just got fed up of it in the end and thought, oh, they'll deal with it in court. Once the judge sees it, they're going to really take it seriously. And I've put the same information and the same evidence time and time again into my court bundles and things like that. And they just ignore it. They don't even look at it. They'll even say things like, we don't need to look at your evidence today. Let's just move on, shall we? For the good of the children. That's what's the point of going to court if you're not going to look at evidence?
So I make them put my evidence in. I'm like, look, I'm making a record and I appeal this that I'm putting my evidence in. And so I'm sorry, but you're going to have to be patient.
Mm-hmm.
You can enter it all in right now and we can just move on, or I'm going to sit here and you're going to make me enter in every document. I can do that too. Whichever one you like.
Yeah. Yeah.
You literally have to assert your authority, not in I've never been an aggressive way or anything like that, but a very factual.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I've been learning. As long as you can continue to quote law, then it's the only way to combat this. I think it's the only way. But again, because you get steamrolled out so quickly, then the only way to get back into court is to pay for an application, which is almost like you're feeding the system, because that's what they want. They want you to feed the system. If you make a complaint, try and talk to managers or heads of department or things like that. If they can't answer the questions, they'll just say, "Oh, I think we're running short of time now. We're going to have to go." Or you can see them panicking if they can't answer the questions. Or they'll say things like, "Oh, well, we seem to have a difference of opinion here. So if you are unhappy with our opinion, you do have an option to revert back to the family court." So they're basically just saying, we're not going to listen to you. Or they say, send us an email or fill out this complaints form or go back to the family court. So they're literally just fobbing you off with a form, or they will try and get you to revert back to the family court, which is going to cost hundreds of pounds just to put in your application and have an audience with somebody.
And time. If they're wasting your. I look at this like it's a money generating game, all of it. And so when you can remove your own personal self out of it and say this is not personal and this is just basically you have to go through these hoops it's almost like a video game. You're going to have to fight this one, this one, this one, this one. It's like to get through it.
Mm-hmm.
Until you pass that, you can't really keep moving forward. Well, I talk about parental alienation all the time and even the domestic violence groups. I'm sure you have a bunch of domestic violence groups there in the UK, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do they get government funding?
Some of them, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Some of them.
And so government funding has to have clients. And if you fix the problem, there is no more funding. So I said this, I sat through about 100 hours of in Colorado last week. I was there doing a 50-50 bill that I had. We called it the Peace Act. And it was exactly the bill I told you. Very short, one pager, very short. It has domestic violence built in. And I had a bunch of domestic violence people there arguing that they don't want a 50-50 bill because it just puts children with abusive parents or an abusive parent. And listening to all this, every time that someone got in there, I heard them say, the judge never looked at my evidence. The judge disregarded my evidence. So I talked to the senators and House reps and I was like, hey, what, after about half it was over, I was like, ask them if they were able to get their evidence in. And sure enough, everyone that they asked never were able to get their evidence in. So it was a procedure issue. It's a failure on the family court, procedure wise, that they make it so hard for the rules of evidence to be entered that a normal person, pro se, that doesn't have any money, that is, if they went through domestic violence, there's no one helping to get their evidence in. And if opposing counsel has a lawyer and they oppose that evidence, then it doesn't come in because they don't know how to overcome that,
Hmm.
even though you have all the evidence in the world. So it has nothing to do, as far as shared parenting goes. Domestic violence is failing in our court system, and it's a procedural issue, not a custody issue.
Hmm.
And so there's really no argument why they should do that. In fact, the domestic violence, I wrote this, it was a quote. You can't stand with domestic violence survivors while preserving custody defaults that enable abuse by turning parents into adversaries. So literally, that's what the domestic violence groups are doing right now. They're wanting that system to stay pinned to each other rather than starting here that could fix it. Every one of us believes that you shouldn't have shared parenting if there's domestic violence. Knowing that, this just starts at inequality. The judges can go under that with clear and convincing evidence. But it's the system failing those domestic violence people and has absolutely nothing to do with shared parenting.
I think you hit the nail on the head, or you alluded to it, or you outright said it. It's a funding thing, right? It seems to be all centered around that. That's definitely what I've discovered with the research that I've been doing. It just all seems to be a big money making. I call it a scam. It's, again, this is my opinion. I call it the government exploiting, separating families and single mothers as well. So it's literally exploiting people and using their children as collateral. It's,
You're
I,
you're leaving people in a harming situation by pinning them against each other the first time. You're causing a lot of this back and forth, and the system's allowing it. All of these bills that I'm talking about will fix this problem. But if you want to start in a system that is what got you the domestic violence in the first place, and you don't want to look for a change, then you're part of the problem.
can you tell us anything, or what you're working on at the moment that might be coming up?
Oh man, there's a lot. And so one that I came up with the other day was, when you get a protective order, restraining order, you'll
Hmm.
have the where you can't contact the other person because they said that you're harassing them or whatever, right?
Hmm.
That doesn't go both ways in the US. Does it go both ways there?
Not necessarily. It's one-way traffic. They call it an NMO in the UK, a non-molestation order.
Yep. So right now we're putting in a clause in those, and I just came up with it. I put it on my Facebook page, but literally that one clause will stop people from weaponizing that. You can't go get it and say, I'm afraid of this person. I need a protective order, restraining order. And then you're blowing them up. And, and then all of a sudden, they text you back and then you go get them arrested because they broke the no contact order. So that's not okay. You're just weaponizing it. So if you're really afraid, you're not going to be contacting them. So this is going to start going both ways. I looked into this. I thought this was a normal thing that this would be. And sure enough, no state in the US, all 50 states, when you get a protective order, restraining order, it goes one way.
And can I ask more of a personal question? You mentioned your children earlier. What's your relationship like with your children through all of this? You said 16 years you've been doing this.
Yes. So they never knew a life outside of family court. And so it's been as normal as we could possibly make it. But
How old are
again,
they?
well, they were 1 and 3 when they got entered into the system. And now one is 19 and 17. Just turned 17. One's aged out. She's already in college. My youngest one, 17, or about to turn 17. She's amazing. She comes, we have joint custody. She comes and goes. Now my ex doesn't mess with she doesn't interfere with my child custody anymore because I have the 3 strikes, the time taken, time back. So that's not a issue. And in fact, now when we trade time or do anything like that, she's very adamant about putting it in writing because she don't want to be held accountable if it's not in writing. So it worked. These bills work, and that's why they're needed all over the country. But yeah, I mean, me and my daughter, she's great. We go to her events that she has, and we go to church all the time, and dinners and daddy daughter dates still, and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think if we can get to the level of where you are in the US with the UK, even if we can just crack the door open a little bit, we'd be making progress. So it's amazing to hear the progress and the successes that you're having. I'm sure a bunch of us are going to probably try and pick your brain a little bit more and ways that you can do this because, like I say, we are hitting brick wall after brick wall in the UK. It's really frustrating, really, really frustrating. So it's an absolute delight to hear what you're doing. And I hope that we hear a little bit more about it. I like to end every podcast with what I call the 3x3. So it's 3 questions with 3 answers. So I'll start with the first three questions. First question. The first question is, what 3 things are you grateful for?
I am grateful for being sane after going through this. I'm grateful for my family being behind me in all this. I'm grateful for the faith that I've had and just the fortitude just to be able to get through this. And all of you can do it. It's just, you have to find purpose. And I always say, turn your pain into purpose.
Yeah, well, that's the reason I'm sat here talking to you. It's the reason that I do this podcast. So the next question, now you're only allowed 3, you're not allowed 500, right? What 3 things are needed to reform family court?
My bills.
You can only pick 3.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, my
There's,
bills.
I said not 500. You have to pick 3.
There you go. Yeah. My bills, form it, educating yourself on it, and sticking with, well, my bills, educate yourself and stick with it. It will reform. It will, but you have to educate yourself first.
And the final question is, what 3 words would you use to describe the family court?
In its present form, destructive, non family, and alienating.
Basically, the opposite of what it should be doing is what you've
Correct.
just described there in its present form. Yeah, it's been an emotional one, I have to say. I've done a few interviews already and I've heard some, horror stories on some of this, but this is definitely one that's got me. It really has put a lump in my throat, like I say. So just for our viewers in the UK, could you tell them where they can find you if they want to look you up? Where's the
Sure.
best place to contact you?
Yeah, most of the places that I post are on social media. On social media is Facebook. So Robert Garza on Facebook. You can go to my website, robertgarza.us. So www.robertgarza.us and join the team. We have Australian teams, we have Canadian teams, we have South Africa team. Like we are literally going to be the largest lobbying group in the world built on nothing. There's no money, there's no incentive. It's totally free. There's no membership fees. You don't pay anything to learn how to do this. And it's the same solution for the same problems. And they're all 1-page solutions for your state, for your countries, everything. And we're turning those same bills into translating them into your own codes and everything else.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting to me. I think we need some proper representation in that as well, because it might help us to move forward with a lot of the work that we're doing as well. So really good advice. Really appreciate that. Robert, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. Really enjoyed the insight. I'm hoping that you're going to come back again and be a guest on our podcast and give us some updates on your progress.
Absolutely. We have a lot of things going on, and, you can't have a strong nation without strong families, and these bills will make that nation strong again.
Fantastic. Thanks, Robert.
Thank you.
If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.